In this lecture, we would like to discuss the methods of election. So, the electoral function can be exercised either directly or indirectly. In India, the system of direct election obtains, for example, in respect of the election of the members of the state legislative assemblies and the House of the People or Lok Sabha. And in case of indirect election, the electorate chooses a smaller body which in turn elects the final representatives. As in India, the members of the Council of States are elected indirectly, so the advocates of direct election consider it most democratic, as the system allows the electorate to take part in constituting the government directly. Also, direct election is supposed to promote political education of the electorate and to arouse interest in politics among the against this system. It is argued that when the people exercise the electoral functions directly, rational voting is made impossible by the wide play of popular passion. So, indirect election is often suggested as an antidote to the vices of direct election. As John Stuart Mill said, this contrivance was probably intended as a slight impediment to the full sweep of popular feeling, giving the suffrage and with it the complete ultimate power to many, but compelling them to exercise it through the agency of a comparatively few who it was supposed would be less moved than the demoed by the gist of popular passion, as the election being already a select body might be expected to exceed in intellect and character the common level of their constituents. The choice made by them was thought likely to be more careful and enlightenment, and would be in any case be made under greater feeling of responsibility than election by the masses themselves. So, in regards to that, we would like to discuss certain methods of election as public and secret voting. So, the method by which voting is exercised may be public or secret. The practice of oral or public voting as prevalent in Prussia, Denmark, Soviet Russia. It was, however, subsequently abandoned as eminent writers like Montesquieu and John Stuart Mill defended public voting. To Montesquieu, it was a means for the education of the common people under the guidance of the enlightened. According to John Stuart Mill, the duty should be performed under the eye and criticism of the public. That was also the view by others. Though theoretically sound, public voting has been found to be practically defective, for it does not enable the voter to exercise his choice freely and independently. As the Prussian experience showed, The government in power or powerful individuals or groups could intimidate the voter and bring pressure to bear upon him. The voter ultimately did not have any free choice at all. Hence, to ensure free and independent voting, now secret voting or vote by ballot has been the universal practice. And now we'll discuss about the plural and what is voting. So, today, the equal weightage of vote as practically universal, one man and one vote, is a virtually unanimous practice. But plural or weightage voting, also called differential voting, was not lacking in the past. In Belgium, for example, plural suffrage was introduced in 1893. Votes were graduated on the basis of educational, property, and professional qualifications. Thus, an individual possessing landed property worth at least 2,000 francs would get two votes. However, the total number of votes exercised by an individual must not be more than three. In Prussia, too, voters were divided into four classes according to wealth, each class having the same number of representatives in the legislature. It led to over-representation of in the legislature. So, in England, also persons having residence or property in more than one constituency could vote several times. Moreover, the holder of a university degree would get an extra vote. Plural suffrage in England has been abolished by the Representation of the People's Act of 1948. Generally speaking, however, the modern democratic principle is one person, one vote. So, in that context, we would like to discuss one another aspects, and that is relating to what is voting. So the main argument for plural voting rested on the idea that in the choice of public officials, the opinion of the intelligent few must have a greater weight than the rest. Votes, it was held, should be weighed and not counted. Professor Sidgwick found in this system an antidote to the evil of mass voting under universal suffrage, and John Stuart Mill recommended it as counterpoise to the numerical weight of the least educated. It was commented by Metternich that plural voting under a system of universal suffrage would lead to the logical annihilation of the latter. Suffrage right is given to the individual in recognition of a capacity. Thus, it is unjustified to give others a superior authority in the exercise of the same function. The main objection to plural voting, however, rests on the fact that no suitable standard or criterion can be devised in practice for a just weighing of the votes. For example, to take property as the criterion is to base political right on wealth, which is clearly undemocratic. Thus, asked Professor Garner observes any scheme for assigning different values to the vote of the property owner, the man of education, the head of a family, the professional man, etc., must be largely arbitrary. So, as regarding the very method of plural and voting that we have discussed in regards to election and representation, and as regarding the second ballot and alternative ballot, that is also another method of election. So, in regards to second ballot and alternative ballot, so the single member constituency, as already stated, raises a very important problem when three or more parties are engaged in the contest. The successful candidate may be elected by less than an absolute majority. To remedy this specific defect, the second ballot and the alternative vote system have been proposed. The second ballot system involves a second or runoff elections immediately after the first. The method is that if in the first election none of the candidates in a constituency gets an absolute majority, all the candidates below the top two are eliminated from the contest. Then a second election takes place in which the contestants are only the top two candidates remain. This system of voting was prevalent in France and Germany for some time. The alternative vote system, also known as the method of preferential voting, does not involve two elections. In an election, the voters are required to make their order of preference for the candidates in a constituency. Thus, a voter is to mark one opposite his first choice on the ballot paper, and second and third as opposite to the names of his choices, to express his second and third alternative preferences in the ballot paper. Then, if on the counting of the first preferences of all the voters, none of the candidate is found to get an absolute majority, the candidate getting the lowest number of votes is dropped out of the contest, and the second choices of the voters who voted for him as their first choice are distributed according to their preferences. In the second counting that follows, the first and second choices are totaled to see if any candidate gets an absolute majority. Even then, if an absolute majority for someone does not emerge, the process of eliminating candidates from the bottom of the pool continues till one gets an absolute majority. So, on this very system of second ballot and alternative vote, Professor Herman Feiner observes these two systems may at best produce a government based on a majority of popular votes as well as of parliamentary seats. Now the majority produced by the system of the second ballot or the alternative vote is a kind of second best, not wholeheartedly the first choice, as it was observed by Professor Herman Feiner. So, we have completed the very topic relating to methods of election, and in our upcoming lecture we would like to discuss another most important part of election and representation is proportional representation.